Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to show you how to reset the level when the player wins the game. So far we already have the end screen, so when the player loses it goes to the end screen, has the high score and all that, but we are not resetting the level when the player wins the game. And right now I'm not changing anything, so basically if you win the game, I mean if the player can fill all the 5 houses with frogs, then we just reset the level and start again from the beginning. So basically the game will run until the player loses. So it's all about achieving the highest score possible. I'm thinking about that maybe I could create some progression, just like with the original game, like add the snakes and the alligators and all that. But I have to see if it's easy or not to implement that at this moment. But right now, I just gonna want to show you guys how to reset the level so that the player can keep playing until he loses all the lives. So let me show you. So basically, we know that the player wins the game on the game manager and on the frog wins block, because that's where we have this condition that if all houses are occupied, meaning that all houses have frogs inside, that's when the player finishes the level. And what we were doing before, we were just incrementing the score by 1000, and we were missing how to reload basically the level. And that's what I'm doing here. So basically here on the scenes, here on the scenes, on the game flow, we were using before this switch to scene, but we also have the reload and do some transition. And that's basically what we are going to do. We are going to reload this scene, so the player will still be on the main scene. We are just going to reload the scene and start again from the beginning. So I'm just reloading and doing a crossfade with 0.5 seconds, so that you can see that the scene actually reloaded. Eventually we should have like maybe some countdown and stuff like that, but I'm not going to worry about that at this moment. But what we need to actually change besides this is the score, because the score, we were resetting the score value here on the game manager when the game was created. Now the problem is that we can no longer do this, because if we are reloading the scene, then the game manager is going to run when created again. So we cannot reset the score inside this scene. We need to reset the score, and basically all the data that we want to persist throughout the game, we need to reset it at the beginning on the intro scene. Basically when the game starts on the intro scene. So what I ended up doing was removing here the resetting the score, and you can see that now I'm setting the score value to the game attribute score that we were already using. Now I don't remember if it was here that we were resetting the score, if it was at spawn player. No, it was here, yeah. So I'm just setting the score value to score, and this is basically to update the label. So setting the score, you can see that I only have this here, and the label will then use the value of the score. And I ended up going to the intro, and on the intro, on the events tab, when on the created block or the created event, you can see that now we are loading the data. So we have all this, and at the end of loading the data, so we load save file and then we do all this. And basically now I'm thinking that I could have used this instead of checking if the high score contains no items. Probably I could have used this. I don't know if we don't have save data, if this load succeeded gives me like a false value, but maybe it does. I'm not sure, but probably it does. Just to make sure now that I'm looking at this. The save fails. No. Load game. Yeah, okay, I don't know if this is related to the data or if this is related only to if the load is succeeded or not in some other terms, I don't know. But it doesn't matter. So we are loading the data, we are doing all this stuff about setting the initial values for the high scores and the users if we don't have them yet. And then at the end, what basically I'm doing is setting the score to 0. So this is where I'm resetting the score value. And I also change the remaining lives, because before we were using the remaining lives were being dealt with on the lives manager, and the lives manager basically had an attribute for the remaining lives. But once again, we need the remaining lives to persist throughout the scenes. So when we reload the main scene, we don't want to reset the remaining lives, because Otherwise, the player would always start the level with the max amount of life. So we want to keep that value. So what I did was I changed the remaining life. So I removed the remaining life here from an attribute from the lives manager, and I created a new attribute, remaining life. So in this way, we can persist the remaining lives throughout the game. And basically here, what I'm doing, so on the lives manager, I'm no longer resetting the remaining lives to the max lives. The only thing that I'm doing is that I'm repeating through the remaining lives and decrementing the value here. So I'm using the game attribute instead of the attribute that we had before. And where I'm dealing with the remaining lives, it's here in the intro. So this is where I'm setting the remaining lives to 7, which is the max amount. I could also create like a public attribute to set this, but at this moment it doesn't make a difference. So this is also something that we need to do to reset the levels. And this is it. I mean, we just need to understand when we are working with different scenes, we need to understand what data that we need to persist throughout the scenes. So, and that data needs to be a game attribute. And if we are going to save the game attribute, and this is also really important because we can use game attributes without saving them. When we save the game attributes, it's to persist those values through gameplay sessions. But if we don't want to keep the values between gameplay sessions, but we only want to keep the values between scenes, then we don't need to save it. But on the other hand, all the game attributes, when we save data to the device, all the game attributes that we have are saved. So we cannot choose which values to save or not to save. So for example, in this case, if I go here to the game attributes, you can see that I have the high scores, the users, the remaining lives, and the score. And when I save the game, for example here, or on the end screen, when I save the game, all these attributes are saved to the disk. But for example, I don't want to save the remaining lives and the score. These are values that I only want to persist throughout scenes and not throughout gameplay sessions. But I don't have that option. So always remember that when you are saving data, when you are using game attributes and you save the game attributes, you need to reset the values that you didn't want to save. You need to reset them here at the beginning. Because imagine, otherwise, if the player loses a game, when it does a gameplay session and the player ends the game, it's going to have a score with a certain value, and the remaining lives are going to be 0. And you are going to save that. So if you don't reset the values here at the beginning, the next player will start with 0 remaining life and with the score that the other one had. So you need to remember that. And this is it about the setting the next level. So on the next video, I'm going to show you how to add some extra stuff that the game has, which is like a fly that appears inside the houses that the player can pick up the fly and gets like 200 extra points, and also a lady frog that appears inside, walking around on one of the logs, that the player can also pick up the lady frog and just carry to one of the houses to have also 200 extra points. So that's all I'm going to show you on the next video. Just before we finish, yesterday I got a little bit carried away with with the game, so I did a lot of changes. I fixed a lot of bugs, and today I'm gonna record the videos about everything that I did. So this is just to warn you, because if you are now looking at the project and it's not exactly like the one that you have, that's okay, because I did a lot of changes and I will try to go to all those changes in the next videos. So just to give you a heads up. And this is it. So thank you guys. I'll see you on the next one.